Yeah, they got a 3D range there.
So yeah, somebody brought it up to me. I had already been thinking about it for a while. And he brought it up, and I was like, oh yeah, I should bring that up.
Good afternoon and welcome to the City of Iceni City Council Committee of a Whole meeting for Tuesday, June 15th. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could all rise for Pledge Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All council members are present. Councilman Burgley is present via Zoom. Is there any public comment at this time? None at this time. Let's move on to committee meeting items. E1, Public Works Update. Mr. Sylvester.
Mayor Johnson, members of the City Council. For Public Works updates, we have Public Works streets began fogging for mosquitoes last week. They've been busy spraying weeds in the bike paths and parking lots as they come up. Hot patching has been completed for now. Might resume later on. We'll see how it goes. Street painting has begun. This year we'll be painting the parade route along its high traffic areas. And an early spring left us with just over 400 tons of road salt that we'll be able to use for next year to sit in the salt shed down there. The entire town has been swept for, streets have been swept so far this year. We'll sweep again before Jubilee Days begins, and if we get some rain, ever will sweep in those rainy days as well. The sewer, as far as, I think you're probably aware that we received some odor complaints for the wastewater treatment plant. Although it's normal to have some odors in the spring as the ponds turn over up there, this year the odors kind of lingered a little longer than normal. The odors are coming from Pond 1. Pond 1 likely received some sort of shock from the system that it just couldn't keep up with. So what we had to do is we took it offline for a couple of weeks. We turned some valves up there, adjusted so we could get more air to that pond, the first two ponds especially. And then we brought in a pump which created some turbulence in the water that created more air in that water as well. Took about a week and a half and the odors really went away, and now they're like non-existent up there right now. So it's back to normal. New pumps were installed at the 8th Avenue lift station. At the water plant, we've been setting record pumping levels up there this year. On a normal year, 2 years ago, if we hit 1 million gallons a day, that was really a big day. Last year, we kind of went up a little bit higher. Last year, we averaged over 1 million gallons in June and July. This year, we hit 1.558 million gallons in a single day last week, last Monday. Yesterday, we beat that at 1.729 million gallons. So that's like an all-time water plant has never seen that. And we're averaging 1.4 million gallons a day right now at the water plant. So we're moving a lot of water up there. The well 2 rehab work has been completed. It's on time for water main flushing this year. As far as the parks go, the farmers market opened on May 28th. New bleachers have been installed at Unity Park with some concrete getting put in there with those two. And then Curious Creatures was held at Bluewood Park today. And that's what I got.
I got a question for you. Is our ponds and our sewer system and water wells, are they going to be able to start handling any more of these developments?
Our water plant can handle, I think it's 3.42 million gallons a day. So we're like at half capacity. We're running all 3 wells right now, but with all 4 filters cells being open, but we're like half capacity there. Wastewater plant, we're like right around that half capacity there as well on an average day. Now we have highs at the wastewater plant. We might hit 600,000 gallons a day. And I think we're at 650,000 gallons a day is where it'll be, but that's the day you get rain. It's an odd day. It's not a normal. We're like 330 right now is what we're having at the wastewater plant right now. So yeah. So I mean, we'd have to almost double the size of the city before we have to do anything with any of that. Yeah, we're down the road yet. Yep.
Okay, because I remember when we did that, there was a discussion making sure that it was built to handle future developments.
I think we're looking at 10 years. If at the plant or something like that, it's 10 years down the road. We really have to address that.
Okay.
No other questions? Good job by Public Works. Thanks, Mr. Sylvester.
Thank you.
Let's move on to E2, American Rescue Funds discussion.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the City of Iceni is planned to receive approximately $700,000 in American Rescue Funds from the federal government. These funds have treasury guidance, similar to when we get other funds that are federal, but slightly different than the CARES Act funding. These funds will be able to be more widely distributed for other city focuses that we have, which would include impacts to the economic portions of the pandemic, but also for infrastructure needs. That's a great thing for the city to hear, because making improvements to our infrastructure, whether they were planned or not planned but need to be done by the city, helps businesses and all the residents within the city feel the help of that stimulus type economic relief, because it helps to reduce tax levies for future years. But ultimately, why we're bringing this forward is kind of a loose discussion of what would the committee like to see staff spend our time on as we put together a plan to bring before you. We have until 2024 to spend these funds, and we can do them in similar, like we did with the CARES Act funds, where we can put things into buckets. But we'd like to know if there's any thoughts of yours on how these funds should be distributed into the buckets. For example, do you want us to use staff to put together a plan that uses the most of these funds for city things, like whether it be infrastructure or economic relief city-wise? Or would you like there to see some other funds being spent abroad, more like the business relief or something like that? I do have Steve, who's here from Small Business, who would also like to present some of the options that he makes available for businesses. He had made actually a request to the committee when we had the CARES Act funding, if you remember that, a year or so ago. But just looking to have just kind of a loose discussion on what are your ideals of how to allocate these funds.
I personally like to see if there's any way we could use it to try to bring in a family restaurant, since we lost the one we had.
I can look into that. I'm not sure. Mike, have you seen anything on that? I mean, economic stimulus,
Yep.
Jobs definitely is something that we can look into. If we can pinpoint it that specific, I'm not sure at this time, but we can definitely look into it. But I definitely know economic relief is part of this package.
I mean, that, believe it or not, the creamery was a staple to the city for a lot of even local businesses. I mean, people went there, and it was a huge asset to the city, and I think right now we're really hurting on that. I mean, I think the world of Jimmy and Jimmy's Pizza, but we got Jimmy's Pizza, we got Chanticleers, we got Subways, we got all these little things, but we don't have that family sit down, going for breakfast, and that kind of thing. And I really think that would be a huge asset and a way to draw somebody to bring one in, now that things are loosening up for restaurants.
Mike, have you heard anything on?
That's my opinion, and I'm one of 5 of us up here, so.
We can look into that, but the broad language is mitigating the economic effects of the pandemic. So.
They left because of the pandemic.
Yeah, they kind of left that pretty broad, but at the same time, how you would work that, we'd have to work on that. So, but it's good feedback nonetheless.
How much did you say it was? 700,000?
Approximately 700,000. Yeah, we haven't received the funds in exact dollar amount yet, but it's approximately that.
Okay. Can we just send a check to everybody that's a resident in town and call it good?
I have considered that.
That's economic relief, right?
It is.
Yep, that would count. Other cities have asked about the same thing. My concern would be is invariably, I don't think that will go smoothly. I think you're going to have somebody who sold a house on a particular day and claims that they should have gotten some portion of that. Somebody who bought a house on a certain day and says they should have gotten all of it. There's also going to be somebody that is on the tax rolls as being the owner, but that hasn't been updated. And so there's all these small instances that I think would come up and would be kind of thorny after the fact to then go back and try to rectify. I think also it's how do you then allocate it, right? Do you give everybody $100? Do you give each parcel $100? How do you do that math? I think the better option, if that's the intent, is probably just stick to the infrastructure work. That then is means either lower taxes or lower utility rates. And then that's felt broadly, and everybody just inherently receives that benefit.
That's personally what I'd like to see done. We're lower taxes more so than we already have, lower utilities more so than we already have. I mean,
Yeah, they and this fund they have, or in the,
then we don't have to run into any of those problems. I see where you're going, I'm with you, but let's do it in a different sense.
What about it, can we just apply that, like, I mean, basically, maybe this would be a similar way to do it, but a less messy way would be just to apply the same amount to everybody's utility bill. So then the people that are paying utilities get the break. That would be easier to distribute, and that would kind of take some of the messiness away that you're talking about, right? As far as just sending a check out. Can we just,
yeah, the issue I'd probably have right off the top of my head on that is how do I decide which utility customers get how much, right? If you say it's usage, is it summer, winter, total usage? What about the resident who says, well, I was in Florida all winter, so I didn't have as much usage, so I didn't get as much benefit. Now you could say, well, you didn't use as much water, you shouldn't. But I think, again, to that end, I think then I would spend it on the water sewer infrastructure.
well, I was more meaning, like, let's say if it's $100, you know, per utility account or whatever it is, that'd be the same amount at each account. You know, just applied as a credit, so not based on usage or anything like that, but just just a flat amount on each account.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. I mean,
Because that would basically accomplish the same goal as writing everybody a check, but it would be a lot cleaner and,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that would be much easier than writing everybody checks and sending them out.
And trying to figure it out.
It's across the board.
For
Yeah,
sure.
As long as it's the same across the board, then you don't want, you want to have to sit there and figure out, well, it's based on this or based on that,
Yeah,
and no, just everybody gets this much.
The other issue I just thought of, if we were to attempt to send checks out to everybody, is what on earth I would do with any uncashed checks.
Oh, yeah.
Would I send that as unclaimed property to the state, or would I need to cancel those checks and send it back to the federal government? That'd be a good question.
I think
But
our
this-
safest bet would be to stick to that infrastructure.
Yeah, this act has really specific carve-outs for water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and broadband infrastructure, which I think gives us a good opportunity to say, okay, look, we've already set our rates based on the projects that we know we have lined up. Let's pay for some of those with this federal money, and then we can reset. We're gonna be revisiting those rates in 2.5 years or less. That's now a new opportunity to be able to come back and say, all right, let's knock these rates down again. We already went down 5 to 15% across the board. Let's see if we can't pull another 5% out of that.
Can that be used towards municipal buildings?
That would be a more difficult category. You'd probably have to make the case that there's water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure implications in that project.
For example, if perhaps if the city was looking to do the pretreatment facility like we've already done, but if we were doing something like that, that would fit within those parameters because it's specifically.
What about the
for
liquor
water.
store? Because that money from the liquor store goes back into the community,
I
and everybody benefits from it,
I think
tax-wise.
I think we'd be in a bunch of trouble if we tried to go
Yeah.
down that route, yeah.
What about our public works project?
It's while it might have a small carve out for water and wastewater like allocations to help fund that, that's not the primary use for that.
Yeah.
So you couldn't
That would be
necessarily take this money and build our new public works building?
No,
Okay.
no, that one, under this act, that would not be a permissible use.
Like if the city needed to have a new well installed or a new, like if we had the filter drain rehab project, that could alone be a couple $100,000. Something like that would qualify for this.
I think sticking to the infrastructure of water sewer rates,
Yeah, the
I
one-
personally think that'd be our safest bet.
How many years would people see the rates drop for?
Well, it would be, I mean,
Just
ultimately-
cheap one year and then it go back to where it was the next year? Or-
Well, we never do the rate study, well, I don't do the rate study analysis based on a short time horizon. I mean, we're always implicitly understanding some built-in inflation into the operating expense, but the capital improvements that we forecast are based on cash flow. right? So I understand that as long as I hit my cash flow markers along the way each and every year, I understand that I have a high probability of meeting my goals 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. So, you know, you would do, I mean, how would probably look in a rate study would be some percent down, you know, let's say 5%, because it wouldn't be a giant, it's only 700,000, so it wouldn't be a giant adjustment, but it would be 5% down, and then you would have to go back to what we've been doing, which is something that accounts for inflation. Yeah.
Any suggestions by you, Councilman Burgley? Or are you just not there? Oh, there he
Well,
goes.
I think I agree with the discussion. I think some good points were brought up, and I think I'm in favor with the general consensus there.
He's okay with the general consensus.
Okay.
Would the committee like to hear from Steve on he came to share some of his options to help businesses and the economic impacts that they've experienced through the pandemic?
I think we should get, he can come up and do his.
That's
spiel.
E3 on our agenda here,
E3.
right?
It is 3, but it does kind of mesh in with the
I-
other 2.
I think we should.
What do you want to do, Sarah?
Whatever he is.
I don't think we should, I'm not by any means say table it or anything, but I think we need to have further discussion that we can all kind of come up with, you know, I do like the idea of going into the infrastructure, sewer and water, see what he has to say. I think we're gonna need some time to absorb, and we do have time for us to spend this money, so it's not like it needs to be done today.
Oh, absolutely. So if we want to have him come forward, and then
Yeah.
you can determine if you want to have him put together a formal proposal to also review, and we will definitely add this whole discussion topic to the next COW as well.
Yeah, thanks. My just real general comment. We don't have to get into all the proposals, so.
Push the button on there.
There we go, very good. Just generally, what I'm just asking for you guys to consider as part of the whole relief package is what's different now than the CARES Act is now there are some opportunities to actually help some of the small business owners beyond just the economic relief. So things like technical assistance, things like business coaching. So I know we want to make things easy, we want to maybe look at the infrastructure, but I would just ask you guys to consider that part of it. We've done this, the city of Cambridge gave us some funding, city of Pine City, Pine County. We were able to help some of the small businesses actually transform their businesses, get more online, drive more business, make the economic community more vibrant. Things like bringing in restaurants, they want to come into a vibrant city, right? And so, not that Isanti isn't, but the work that we do is all about how do we increase vibrancy of our community? How do we make our small businesses more present? How do we make them more active? How do we make them more engaged? How do we make the community members more engaged? And so, part of that is sitting down with the business owners. A lot of them have businesses that they've been running forever, but they don't really know how to run a business in terms of getting online. They don't really know how to engage people in sort of a virtual way. And so that's what we've been doing in some of the other communities, is helping them figure out how to do that. And we've seen a lot of breakthroughs. So this is really just an ask for you guys to consider, whether it's our company or another company, to just consider that as part of the funding. It's kind of these once-in-a-lifetime opportunities that you guys get to get money that you can kind of decide what to do with. And one of the things I think you should consider is how do we help the business community not just stay open, but actually start thriving and start to pivot their business a little bit, because things are not, they're not going to get the foot traffic that they've always gotten. I think a lot of people are thinking when things go back to normal, there's not going to be the same level of normalcy. So that's just my only ask, is just to consider that as part of this package.
You gave us a price tag on your services once. Do you recall what that was, Steve?
I don't recall exactly but I think it was $20,000, but it kind of depends on how you guys want to, if you wanted to look into doing this, we can come up with a proposal specifically that answers the questions that are in the mandate here, because it's a little bit different than what it was before. We can do everything from, working with all the business owners to, that proposal was really around selecting maybe 10 or 15 businesses that want to get online, that want to take their business to the next level, and working specifically with them. And that is one of the considerations. I think there's a lot of funding that's been used in communities that just goes to the business community in general. And frankly, there's a lot of business owners that are kind of comfortable where they're at, and that's perfectly fine. I think we work the best and we get the most out of this when it's businesses that are saying, you know what, I want in. I want to take my business to the next level. I want to grow. I want to be able to start employing more people, those sorts of things. Those are the folks that we can really help. Otherwise, the money tends to just go away. It just gets lost in the wash. So we can certainly put something together if you want on that piece.
I'm just trying to think of any business I know and tell them that isn't online already.
I could give you a long list.
That are businesses in Isanti?
Sure.
That aren't online, whether it be social
Maybe
media
they have a
or
Facebook page,
website or,
Yeah, there's a lot of businesses, yeah, I mean, I can give you a list, I don't wanna name them now, but, there's a lot of people, and a lot of them are fine with what they're at, that's my point, is not, let's not force them to do something they don't wanna do, but there's a lot of people that, it's really sub-optimized, so they might have a Facebook page, they might even have a website, a static page, but the problem is, the technology says, if somebody goes into Google and says, I'm driving through Isanti, where's a restaurant in Isanti? Just because they have a website, just because they have a Facebook page, doesn't mean they're going to be found. And we want people to be found. That's sort of some of the work that we do. Yeah, and I didn't mean that as an indictment of the businesses of Isanti, but it is a reality that most small businesses really struggle with online presence.
is there, Jimmy, you own a business in town.
Yep.
Is it relatively easy for a business right now to just go on Google and Google how to start a website or how to get online? I mean,
You've got pretty much all
you know
that
what I
stuff,
mean?
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I just started a new kind of a side gig that I'm doing truck dispatching, and I had no idea how to set up a website, and I watched YouTube videos, and for, $10 a month or something like that, or maybe that's a year, I bought the domain, and, it's like $2 or $3 a month for the editing program, and I have a website that works just fine for me. But yeah, I mean, for some people, that would be pretty tough if they aren't familiar with how a computer works, but it's pretty easy though. But yeah, you could go on YouTube and learn everything you needed to learn. But I guess my question for you would be, Cambridge gave you how much for a budget to
20,000.
20,000, and how many businesses did you work with?
15, I believe.
15? Okay.
I could give you the actual numbers, but that's ballpark.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's my experience is, as far as even our, franchisees in the pizza business, when you hold corporate meetings or you try to make suggestions, business owners are pretty independent. They don't really want a ton of help. And I mean, I could be wrong, and your experience could be different, but that's been my experience, is that they'd rather be sent a check than be sent somebody to give them a hand.
That's
But-
actually what I was thinking, is $700,000. I mean, can you send just a check to businesses?
Well, and another thing
They
is to
could-
consider that, similar to what we did with the CARES Act funds, is we could do another grant relief program to our businesses. And if they chose to spend those funds with small business to help them with those maybe technology challenges, if they have those, they could. It maybe gives them a little bit more freedom to spend it on, if it's because they had to buy a lot more hand sanitizer to clean their business, or if they could put it to something else, that's another option.
Like if, say, VFW wanted to remodel the interior, just for an example, maybe they could use the money towards that, or,
I don't know if that would be allowed. I believe that has to be for some kind of economic impact that they experienced because of the pandemic still.
There.
So
But I mean,
it'd
we
be
could-
similar to what we did last time.
right, but
They
we,
have to say that they need it for these
I guess,
expenditures.
what I'm getting at is like the $700,000, say we want to spend, half of that and just cut a check to the local business owners, and then can't they just do with that money whatever they choose to?
Yeah, we'd have to be able to identify that there was, some negative economic impact from the pandemic. But of course, once the money goes out, I mean, there's limited ability to, if
Verify.
they spent money cleaning their shop and they also spent money, doing upgrades to the interior, who's to say which money they spent where? Right?
But-
I mean, it's sort of a,
That's what I mean, does it, can't.
We're not
if-
trying to regulate that.
No,
Once we
I'm just-
wait them that check, we're
check,
not
it's-
regulating from there
it's up to-
further, is
Yeah,
what Councilman
it's-
Carlson's trying to
It's
say.
up to them to
simplest-
use it if they wanted to add an
This-
employee or
the
whatever
simplest-
they want to use that money for.
Yeah, the simplest way is just to identify either a loss of revenue or an increase in expense during the pandemic, and be able to identify that exceeded a particular amount, and as long as you're giving them an amount that's less than that, that's it. And then after that, if they take that money and do whatever with it, that's kind of their business, I guess. I mean, if they want to take a trip to Florida, that's fine, but that's probably not in their best interest, so they aren't likely to do that. All right?
I think we have a little food for thought, chew on it a little bit and toss it around and decide what we want to do. I mean, as Councilman Lundin said, we don't have to decide right this minute, so
Right.
I mean, we've heard Steve's idea, we've heard the infrastructure idea, I mean,
Good
I
idea.
think we've gotten some pretty good ideas.
I would probably say to Steve here is maybe he should give us something that we would know how much we'd be spending if we did use the service on this, and we can determine from that point.
That'd
If
be
it's-
asking them for a formal proposal
Yeah, I
then.
didn't want to get stuck in the weeds with it, because I really just wanted to make the point that I think there's an opportunity here to really look at serving the business community.
But I'm not gonna be one person that's gonna say I'm gonna spend $80,000 to give out 700,000. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanna know. I mean, it's a numbers game. It's a numbers thing. And if I don't know that, I'm not gonna throw a $10 bill out the window and go pick up a dollar laying on the street.
Yeah, I mean, I understand how that works. So I think if the council decides that, maybe through you guys, if the council decides that this is something you want to explore, happy to put a proposal together. I don't want to put something together if you guys are like, you know what, that's not really the direction we want to go. That's perfectly fine, and then it's not worth our time to put something together. But I will tell you that there's a lot of relationship building that happens between city councils, business communities, when the council does say, you know, here's some funding for coaching. But I don't want to beat a dead horse. You guys know your community very, very well. I'm just saying that there's a lot of opportunity here with coaching. Mhm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Food for thought. Something for us to chew on, gentlemen, for
We
sure.
will add it to the July committee of the whole agenda for further discussion. Thank you.
Let's move on to E4, the park archery range. Councilman Rick Gordon, huh?
Yeah.
And I also would like to share that Ms. Olson has come here as well, so she can help share some information that she's learned on this topic as well. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, I gave you guys a few sheets of paper there, but the main thing is just kind of where I was thinking maybe we could put it, just kind of looking for a space for it, but, when I was kind of studying this, it says page 5 at the bottom there, but archery park development guidelines at the top, but, kind of on the amount of space that we would need for like 5 targets and, kind of space them out at like 10 yards, 20 yards, 25, 30, 40, so, and I was just thinking, trying to get by cheap and doing, hay bales with paper targets and, people can bring their own targets and we just have some pegs there that they would put in. I don't want it to be something that's a huge, Taj Mahal or anything. It just would need, would need the space, obviously, to make sure that we're not, shooting arrows over to the community garden center or something like that. But basically, they say at 40 yards, you need 25 yards beyond that as far as a space barrier. Or you could put up like a berm or something like that too. But, so anyway, it was just a thought. I didn't want to dig too much into it until I talked with you guys and saw if it was something maybe you were interested in at all, but I know there's a lot of people that shoot archery and there's not really anywhere to, I suppose you can go up to the Sportsman's,
But
club
you
up
pay for that.
north there, but you gotta pay for it, yeah.
The only thing I'm gonna tell you, Jimmy, the only thing we're gonna have to do is with this, and I don't personally think it's a very expensive venture, like you said, but we gotta fence it in. You
Mm-hmm. Well,
gotta
yeah, I
keep people
think
from
that's-
getting in, and that's the cost.
Yeah, you gotta
That's
keep
gonna
people
be
from
the-
getting in, yeah.
That's gonna be the cost. I am not opposed to this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something else that gives our community something to wanna be here for.
And I don't think it needs to be a fancy fence. I mean, it could probably just be, probably could be barbed wire for all that, that wouldn't look very good, but I mean, it could be something cheap. It doesn't have to be a fully enclosed fence. It just has to be something to stop people from getting into the area,
It'll probably have to be at least a 10-foot high
You think
chain link
something-
fence. Oh,
something more like
absolutely.
that?
You gotta keep them from crawling over the top.
Yeah.
Where were you thinking about putting this, in the River Bluff?
Well, yeah, that map that I kind of just drew a box on there was kind of down in that corner is kind of what I was thinking.
So is there access for PD to go down there, chief?
Well, it's all
Bike
mowed,
trail.
where that trail is.
So a squad could drive potentially down in there.
I think it would fit, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Is it, I'm just wondering if, I'm not opposed to the idea, but I was just wondering if there's possibly a better location.
Maybe, yeah, I was just trying to think of somewhere with
Legacy
space,
Park.
but- at the time I was looking, I was thinking it would
There's
probably
a lot
take
of
more
field,
space.
open
but-
fields, part of Legacy Park back there. It's not all wooded.
Where?
Where?
I don't know. Is there fields in Legacy Park? I've walked through that park many a
I
time.
thought it was all wooded.
Yeah.
The part
The-
that the city owns is wooded.
So you walk through the field to get to the trailhead, whose land is that then?
So there's
It's all
really not,
developed.
it's all houses now,
Oh.
besides the parking lot.
Every
We
bit of
paved
that's
all the
houses
parking
now.
lot, But now that,
Oh.
where like all the buses
Been a
used
while
to
since
park
you've been
for
down
field
there, huh?
trips,
Probably 2
It's
years.
no longer
Oh,
there.
yeah, you should go see it today.
Back lots now, that was development.
There's houses everywhere. No more field, Councilman Collison.
I mean, I know where he's talking, I mean, but
I do
nice
too.
because
Yeah,
it
it used to be.
was, but
Used
now
to
there's
be.
houses in there, so you definitely don't want them shooting around the house.
Yeah, it's crazy over there. There's
Yeah.
so-
I don't, in
I'm
all
not a-
honesty, I don't know where you would put it. I mean, good idea where to put it.
That's the only place I could, I mean, I didn't look that hard for other places, I just thought that was the most space we had, and it had a trail going to it, and,
All I'm worried about is can PD get to it to make sure there's no riffraff in it?
well, they mow it pretty wide, I think.
And would we close this at 10 o'clock like we do every other park? Then I guess I would lean on you and say, this is gonna be underneath your realm, so.
Yeah, so Mayor and council members, if I can provide some input here, I did do some looking into the space at River Bluff, what that might entail to actually put an archery range in there. I think we'd have to do some scoping around to see what would be the best location. The fencing idea would be one of my recommendations, because really any area in that space, we would need to make sure that it is enclosed and protected. With that, you'd need to put up some kind of mesh so that you've got a backstop so that arrows are not going through. Further though on that, in city code for Parks and Recreation, we do have an ordinance restricting the use or possession of, well, it's bows and arrows and slingshots in the parks, so we would need to amend that to be able to allow this in any sense in the parks.
It would only be, it would have to be designated only in that area.
Correct.
You couldn't put it so it's in any park.
No, it's still prohibited in every park except for this.
Yep.
And
And in your own backyard, it's prohibited.
Mr. Gordon does have a point, and I have seen them. I believe there's one in Shoreview. I believe there's one in Vadnais Heights. I believe there's one over in Burnsville. There's quite a few in the cities.
A lot of them are
No,
not privately run, but club run. The
Nope.
city gives them the land and,
no, city ran.
Yeah.
They're all city, they're on city parks.
Right,
And the
I
city-
understand that.
And it's city owned and operated,
oh,
because I've stopped at
I
it.
guess I haven't
I
been
was,
to
when I looked it up, I was surprised that there was so many, especially down in the metro where they were doing that. I was,
Yep. I'm not opposed to it. I think I think Alyssa needs to look at maybe the best locations for it. But I do recommend that we have at least a 10-foot high fence, chain link fence or something, because all it takes is one little kid to run in there and somebody's actually shooting the way they're supposed to, and he gets in that 25 yards behind there and gets killed, then we're SOL. So it has to be done, and I'm not opposed to spending that money on it. I think this is something that's a good thing for our community.
Would it be something that would be allowed at our compost facility, like over that way where we don't have kids running around typically, but you could go there as like a destination for a place?
Possibly, yes. So a space that doesn't have paths around it would be ideal. With River Bluff, obviously, we have trails going circling
Yeah.
that upper area. We've got trails going all the way down. So we really have to have a space where we are not aiming anything towards people moving.
The only
What
other
Ms. Wood's
problem-
talking about is perfect for that.
But the problem is, it's closed every other day or whatever the hours are, so they couldn't get in there.
well, that would have to change. if
Yeah,
that-
That we'd have to have somebody there full time.
And I believe that that's what Coon Rapids did when they put in their shooting range, is it's at the compost site. So they used that location over there and built out a space for their.
I think
for
Noka
archery and
Ranch does
shooting.
as well, and they do have it staffed too, or they did back in the
But then
day.
again, I don't want to short Public Works for what comes in the future for them either. I mean, we all know we're gonna need more room in Public Works the more the city grows.
Well, how often, did you see how often those other ones were opened? Because opening it 3 to 4 days a week, is that enough? Perhaps it just lines up with the times of the compost facility, so you already have an attendant there, but it's a separate area, or, it's just on this side of the compost, not where people are dumping. And you already have a person there, you wouldn't be having any additional expenses.
The ones that I've seen are not manned and they're open every day. They open at 8 AM till
Okay.
9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, or whatever it was.
yeah,
Do
I
they
I mean,
don't,
I'd still want it to
They have
fall under
leagues and stuff that use
Alyssa, but
those, and
yeah, I don't think
certain
they're
nights of the week are
staffed
league
very-
nights
Very
and-
often, yeah, I think it's just open and you just go.
So there are definitely the spaces that are unmanned. We would just need to kind of check on like liability issues with that, just to make sure that, and, you know.
I think, like, I agree, Ms. Wood and
Well-
Mayor Johnson is, I think that compost site's actually a really good site, because there's not gonna be a lot of people running in there, and they already have the natural berms behind there. It's just how are we going to allow, because if anybody's gonna do it, they're gonna wanna go out, especially like right now, this time of year, kids are out of school, parents taking their kids down to go shoot bull. This is kinda dumb, I can't go on Tuesday, or I can't go on Wednesday, and I can't go on Saturday, or we wanna go on Sunday and do this, and they can't get in there?
Well, we could just fence and open up a different spot. I mean, just for instance, if we were to say we were gonna put it on the east side of Public Works lot, we could fence in, you know, the area.
Separate entrance for it.
Yeah, and open a separate entrance, so that way you don't have to worry about it, Mr. Sylvester, and it's in her realm, not yours.
I think these are something that we should have looked into. To how
I
we can do
agree.
it.
Good idea,
And I think we should
Councilman
bring it
Byrne.
back and see if there's more discussions. Absolutely, Jimmy, and teasingly, I said to you, it costs money.
I know.
But like I said, that's how it works. You know, you want something, or Dan wanted something, you have to kind of work together to make it work for everybody. You know, it takes.
We're not gonna use crossbow at this thing, just bow and arrow,
And I
right?
don't think you wanna use broadheads either, you
Yeah.
just field tips.
Target.
Target
We
tips
probably
and-
wanna look at that too, to make sure
Yeah.
we,
Yeah, so there are a number
All you can do
of-
for that is post a sign. You can't
Yeah.
be there policing.
and again, I just want it accessible that, you know, PD can do their due diligence as well. Not that they need any more work in the city, but, you know, it is what it is when our community grows, right, chief?
Then what's, what costs are involved, like, far as people bring their own paper targets in and just put it on the
I
backstop?
think so, I mean, we could probably just make sure there's, I don't know what they're called, but they have like little plastic kind of screws sort of that you just kind of
Yep.
hand screw into the target to hold them in, and I think
Just
all
put
it
a
would have
sign
to be
up that
is-
says, you know, do your part, keep it clean for the
Yeah.
rest of the community.
When I go
It's just like
by
the
one of
dog park.
these,
You wanna
again,
keep it clean,
I'll
pick
stop
up.
in there and I'll go down and take a picture of what they're using for
Yeah.
the backstops. We get an idea. Cause I've gone by them many times and I always kept thinking to myself, well, I don't know why we don't do something like this. And it's obviously a great idea, Jimmy's point. I mean,
Yeah.
the more we do for the community, the more we're gonna bring more people into this
And I-
community.
and
I
it's-
concur.
I think it's like, kind of like the sliding hill, that really didn't cost us an arm
Yeah,
and a
we
leg
spent
for what it
7,000 on it.
provides.
Yeah, right.
So-
I will just say on
Kind of
costs, so if we were doing something at River Bluff, we'd probably be looking at least about 5 to 10,000. With clearing the space for it, with putting up fencing, with actually getting the materials that we would need to run a range.
Wait a minute, we could
But-
put this money towards the liquor store. I'm just kidding, Jimmy.
But the,
With compost site, with doing something over there, the cost could very well differ, but at minimum for producing this space, we're looking at least about 5, 6,000.
Sure.
And
I
then
voted,
River
I
Bluff,
voted
though.
for the sledding hill, so just to clear that up, that type of it's the $300,000 that I have a problem with, that's,
But that, you'll see that when that happens, you're gonna say, God, that really wasn't a bad idea.
well,
I'm not gonna
I'm not
repeat,
saying it's not gonna be nice.
listen,
just
I'm not
saying-
gonna repeat, but I'll
Yeah.
lean right on what Councilman Lundin
Yeah,
said.
I never, and I don't think I ever did imply that the amphitheater wasn't gonna be nice, and, I mean, it will be nice, but.
If it's for the community, I'm
I
100%
really,
behind
100%
it.
or anything for this community. You build something like this, it's not just residents that come. You bring more residents in, more industry, more
Yep.
commercial comes in.
Yep.
You don't have those things, they don't want to bring their business here. You have to bring people in, and if we become people-friendly and bring in residents and bring in development, the more people that move into this area, bigger businesses, industry, look at it and say, they are committed to their people. Let's do something here because we can get by a lot cheaper in Isani than we can in Blaine. And we do have more people to draw for employees. So it does make a big difference. It sounds like a lot of money at first, but as the time goes, it becomes very minuscule for what it brings into us. You know, that's just kind of like the idea in this relief money. If there's any way we could do this to get a restaurant, that's just gonna help the city and the residents. You know,
the River Bluff location, you're gonna run into problems with the DNR because that's scenic easement. I used to live there, and I was very limited. I couldn't even put a shed in the back 30 feet of my yard because it was in a scenic easement that goes all the way to the river.
And that's by the DNR, just.
And I
so
couldn't
you're
do,
all
I had,
aware.
it had to be a particular kind of fencing. I couldn't put cement posts in. I mean, there was a lot of restrictions.
DNR is tough.
Which, again, great idea, great idea.
I
I
think-
just think there's a better location.
Yeah, I think
Just a-
by the compost, I think it'd be fine too.
Yeah.
I
Another
mean,
good location, perhaps.
And
to
good idea by
explore,
Miss Wood, I'll give her that.
Yeah.
I'll say that too. Good idea.
Over by the red shed, where PD has her shed and Public Works has her shed over there, because behind that would be, you know, a storm, that creek that runs by, and then you have the railroad. Again, you don't have anybody walking behind you. So that might be another, depending on how much area you need, and that one's already mowed and landscaped, so you don't have the cost of
And you have a
clearing it
parking
out,
lot there.
shaping it, and you have a parking lot, so that might be another location.
Yeah, there's
Sure.
spots. I think we should definitely dig a little
Yeah.
further into it. More work from this.
What's gonna work out with Public Works and plus Park and Rec.
Not that you have enough anyway, Miss Olson. We'll just give you more.
So I just, yeah, I think that as long as they can work it out, we can figure out, and then we'll just go from there.
We'll have her do a little bit more work on that and bring it back for the July call for
And I'll try to get by one of those when I'm down in the cities, whatever, and I'll try to take some pictures of their stops. Because I think what I've seen is it's a round, I don't know what it's made of, but I've seen them, they're round. And they
Like
just put the targets on
styrofoam
them.
or something. I know what you're
There's-
talking
There's
about.
materials that you
Yeah.
use to build the targets, and
Yeah.
then people generally.
I know
bring
exactly
their
what
own
he's
target.
talking about. I've seen him too. At least we're not picking on Miss Selman this time. It's Miss Olson, so,
Great idea, Councilman Gordon.
very much so. Let's move on to
What
E5.
about, Paul, does he have any input on that?
Oh, Paul, you have anything to say on this item before I move on to the next?
Elm Creek Park Reserve has a public range that might be worth checking out with them, see how they handle some of these issues.
Okay.
Okay, you can look into that one, Elm Creek.
Anything else you got there, Councilman Burgley?
No, thank you.
All right, let's move on to E5, the editorial and legal analyst review and modification to ordinances.
All right, I'm really excited, Mayor and Council, that we are in our final. Eat, Sleep, and Breathe code. Super funny that I asked the attorney to have a conversation with me at 7:30. He's like, you want to talk about city code at 7:30? I'm like, I'll talk about city code any day, anytime. Anyways, I moved it to 8 o'clock. Anyways, but we're in our final stretch. So as you know, this started over a year ago with going through all of our city code for a number of different things. We were looking to make sure that we had correct and updated statutes, because some of those hadn't been looked, some of our chapters hadn't been looked at in over a decade. Consistencies of terminology within the chapters and among the chapters. So because some of our city code have been piecemealed and borrowed from other cities, it didn't all jive. Legal analysis for compliance, and inserting policies that were done by resolution to be within the ordinance, so this it's enforceable. And just made sure what we did with practice was updated, again, mostly done by resolution into the code. So what you have, you were emailed a detailed editorial analysis done by General Code. That was part of our code project that we started last year in 2020. There were a number of things that they found, so you saw that I ticked the boxes of where the recommendation, yes, that statute was wrong, please correct it. So I think that was like 204 or 208 pages, so you have that via email to review. What we have in your packet as well is some recommendations. It is recommended, after speaking with our city attorney, that we do not need Chapter 29. The benefit of taking things out of our city code, out of being codified that we don't need to be, is we do save costs in the long run, because we're not paying to update something all the time that we're no longer using. To have a chapter that's for newsletters, I looked at revising it to include, you know, our electronic things like our Facebook, and then ultimately we don't really need it. The city attorney said that you shouldn't be excluding groups, so it had previously in Chapter 29 that certain groups can be included in our newsletters. Well, you should not do that. It's not recommended by our attorney, whether it's preferential treatment to nonprofits or excluding political groups over here. It's not, you shouldn't be doing that, because you can get into some legal trouble by giving that bias to one group over another. So ultimately, we don't need that. So recommendations to remove Chapter 29. Chapter 312, unclaimed property, recommending a repeal and replace. A lot of outdated language. Met with Chief Myers, discussed this a little bit. We thought that this terminology and what's included is better. So that was included in the packet. Chapter 257, that's the bulk of what you have here. That's right-of-way management chapter. What we did here is we included small cell wireless. Now, we had some small cell wireless done by guidelines approved by resolution, revamped all of that, included it within the ordinance, and I did attach the red line version so you can see what all I changed, because there is quite a lot. And then I also included the final, so you could take a look at that. I don't think that there's anything in here controversial to review per se. It really was, for the most part, things that we've already adopted, but just was never put into the ordinance. So that's what's in here. If you have any questions on that, let me know. Along with the chapter 257, because we had small cell wireless in our right-of-way permit application, I separated those out and made it its own application, which is consistent with the League of Minnesota Cities recommends and what cities should do to keep track of who's locating on city towers, other poles within the city. So you'll see that that application draft is included. And then lastly, you'll see that there's an amendment to chapter 160. So we needed to include fees. There were some fees in there for small cell wireless, but it wasn't all accurate for even what was approved by resolution. So I went through that to ensure that we had everything correct. Let me just get to that page in here. So, all right, sorry about that. I have to go back to the beginning.
So you have to go?
You need to leave. Okay, I'm not finding that. There we go, hello. It's on page 76 of all the documents that you have within this item number. So you'll see here that we separated, have the support structure and pole, so the terminology is consistent with the application, the permit application here. I did not change or update the pricing on that. We left that the same. Instead of calling it rent, it's actually a fee. It's not a rent that we're gonna collect all the time, so you can see that. And then we did have the permit fee because it will be separated out. So I talked with Mr. Cook on engineering costs, because these should be looked at just like our right-of-way permits, but also more, takes more time to make sure that they're right, because they're not only going in, attaching to a pole per se downtown, you gotta make sure you have line of sight, you're not blocking views, and there's a lot more that goes into it. So I did add in that, plus actual engineering costs if there's additional to review. So that's quite a lot. Hopefully you had time to review that ahead of time. Does anyone have any questions about removing chapter 29, the replacement of 312 or 257 here before I move on?
Nope, I already looked over this. I don't know if you guys did, but I looked over it and I don't see anything. I mean, I think our worry was we wanted to be more community friendly as we change these ordinances. I think they did a great job. Not only changing language, but taking some things out that were just old and outdated. I do think they've covered the liability. Everybody knows how much I hate that word, of the city versus being community friendly. There was nothing here, and I'd be the first to say if anything looked malicious in here, which I don't think at all. I think they did a phenomenal job. Good job by the police chief, Mr. Cook, Ms. Wood, and our city attorney. That is why we chose our attorney. He's a phenomenal dude.
I personally think if that's what staff's recommendations are and everybody involved in it is fine with it, I think we should bring it to council for a vote and move forward with it.
I concur.
Okay, so then I'll move on. Some other things that we did amend in the fee schedule, since we were already amending it, because we have to post and do those ordinance guidelines or requirements. The editorial analysis did recommend that our fee schedule just be fees. So what that means is that we take out anything that's a fine or a penalty. So basically the front part of, or the beginning part of chapter 160, we had the administrative citation fees and penalties. Those are recommended to take those out of the fee schedule. So those will be removed, if everyone concurs, removed from chapter 160, and left within the chapter that they're in. So administrative citations, chapter is 65, so that's where all those fines would be listed. If there's any penalties in other chapters, it'll just be within the chapter. So this chapter 160 will just be fees. That's kind of consistent among the other cities and what they do. Ours just kind of got mishmashed together at some point.
That's a good way of putting it.
I concur.
The other change, or recommended change to chapter 160 is Ms. Selman's. So we had residential rental license fee. The chapter did state that there was a reinstatement fee, but it was not included in this chapter 160, so we added that. It was already there, we just need to make sure that everyone knows that it's there. And then when it comes to escrows, so many pages. Escrows, within planning and zoning, we have the development agreement is 10,000, and we have the minor development agreement, which is 5,000. We added the word minimum. We felt that that would be a little bit easier for people when we have our developers looking at what's put in the development agreement, even though it's been consistently done that that's the minimum. It can go above that. It didn't state it, so we wanted to make sure that we were very transparent on, yes, we know that it says in here that it's a minimum, therefore it reflects the same within your development agreement.
Any questions, comments, concerns on that?
I think
Again, I
it's
looked over
fine.
this, so this is like a broken record, so.
Okay, and then the next item is we did have an appendix 343, which is our gas franchise. For some reason, that one was codified within our city code. However, the other 6 were not. So we have cable franchise and other franchise agreements. The recommendation is, one, to update that agreement because it was a 25-year term and it has been expired for a couple of years. So I'll be working on re-upping that. Because we do have that main gas line running through the city, but then uncodifying that chapter and having it be a standalone chapter like our other franchise chapters. Still city codes, still ordinances, they're just not updated by the codifier, which again saves us money because staff can do that. Then we have chapter 111. This was in the handout that Ms. Selman passed out. She's got a minor revision in that, which
It's labeled 5 on it, gentlemen.
Yep, this is 5 that was just passed out today. And it really is just changing in chapter 111, section 9, appendix J, grading to the 2018 International Building Code. So again, just updating terminology. It was old and that needs to be done. And if there's no questions or concerns to this point, I'll pass it over to Ms. Selman, who's going to talk about chapter 253.
Ready?
Let's hear it, Ms. Selman. Nobody's speaking up, so your turn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We're looking at, I wanted to discuss with you about Chapter 256, Residential Property Maintenance Standards. So that's what we have for some of our code enforcement and some of our general standards that properties, your windows have to be operating, if your screens are broken, you have to replace them, those types of things, but it's specifically only to residential. So I was talking with our new building official and with our community development specialist, and we would like to entertain the idea of redoing this ordinance so that it's all property maintenance standards. So it does apply to commercial, industrial, institutional, to everybody. So it's, when a business, you go out there and let's say they have a window boarded up. Well, they can't do that if you change the ordinance. Or we had an instance in one of our buildings that they had a roof leak allegedly, and it was leaking into the neighbor's property. Well, we don't have anything in here that says that your roof has to be in working order. Building code doesn't require that for commercial either. They only require it at the time of the inspection. The time that it was inspected, it was in working order. So we couldn't help that person.
With like a collapsed wall on a business?
Collapsed wall type thing. Yeah, in meeting just the standards, so then it is in our ordinance and we can enforce it just another way. So we just wanted to get your feel for that, and my team can work on that and we'll bring it back for consideration at COW, but I just wanted to see if you were even interested in us going down that hole.
I don't see a problem with that, but I think our building official, and I think you have better things to do with your time to go out and see if somebody's screen's torn on their house. If they're anybody like me that works 12 hours, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, I don't have time to fix the damn thing, and I know it's bad, and I'm gonna wanna get it fixed as soon as I get time, but I don't need somebody coming up and telling me I need to get my screen fixed.
Well, it
I know what you're saying, referring to, but I'm using that as an example.
Okay. Yeah, oh, if I may, that's already in our code for residential. I'm just asking to add the commercial and, industrial portion, then also update.
I mean, we
for
already
current
enforce
language.
these codes on a residential side. Pretty much all she's asking is, can we add it to commercial, industrial, institutional? Can we mirror it with those guys, what we're doing with residential already? Do we have a problem with that?
Yeah, and also updating the language, per, the code changes that are
I
recommended.
don't think they're gonna
And-
nitpick screens.
And we would do
I
it
think
as
it's fine.
the complaint base as well.
Right.
I mean, and then it would be up to code enforcement to enforce it, not my department.
Right, which I have had people email me or call me on businesses as well, and here goes the leg we need to stand on for code enforcement, so. I mean, I think we'd all agree that we want our businesses to look just as good as our homes. We want our community to look good, period. We don't want people to drive into our community and say, have you been through that trashy town? I don't want to hear that. So, I mean, I guess I'm okay with all of this. I don't know what your guys' outlooks are, if you have any questions or anything.
I believe so. I can be too. I was just using that as an example. I think we got better things to do with our time than, you know, I mean, if somebody's siding's blowing off their house and it's been off for 6 months, yeah, I think we need to get that addressed. But I mean, sometimes it just, like I said myself, I'm hardly ever home.
Or a business.
Yeah, or a business, yeah.
Business siding's been off for months, or a wall's been collapsed forever, or what have you. I mean, I agree. I think we should have a leg to stand on. I think the poor code enforcement guy over there has a lot of work to do, but I guess we're adding to that as well. Hey, we might as well pick on him too. We're picking on you. Ms. Selman, you are next. I hope you know.
I know.
All right.
And, in the direction of previous previous council, it's been complaint-based, and I'm not asking to change that. I'm
Yeah.
just asking to update this.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like it.
I want to leave it as complaint-based
I
because,
agree.
you know, that's
Ain't
my
no reason why
opinion.
we should be picking on people. That happened in the past. Paul, you got anything you'd like to say on this, sir?
Well, no, I thought the discussion was good, and I think the consensus was good, and the staff did a good job. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so, to finish up this item, in your packet, page 87 to 103, that is a summary of what you had received as a separate email, the 204 pages, has all those changes. I'll also include the chapter 111 that we had presented tonight, as well as, will that be a major change to the chapter? Yes. So we'll leave the chapter 256 that Sheila just spoke about as a separate one. Otherwise, this will be moving forward to council. Just so you're aware, because we do need to post to the public, and we have requirements by statute of what we have to do for ordinance and city code changes, we are permitted to just publish and post, and then ultimately publish the analysis summary. So we will make sure that we update this, so we're not having to publish 204 pages. And this will be coming back to council. If there's anything else that you want to see come back, like the full chapter 257 or something, please let me know. Otherwise, it'll be this summary that I'll have all the changes, and then the final 257, not the red line.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on to E6, speed limit sign and crosswalk on 3rd Avenue discussion. I've gotten multiple emails. Obviously, you can see I'm carrying this one. I've gotten multiple emails. I can say 2, maybe 3 at most. They're concerned about the speed on 3rd Avenue by the soccer complex. They want it to say beginning 30 miles an hour or end 30 miles an hour for northbound, southbound traffic on 3rd Avenue. It did come up in a discussion with Ms. Wood that she said we've never done this before. Maybe we want to discuss it with, every piece of in-town, out-of-town area we have. I don't think we need to go to that extent myself, but that's for you guys to, food for thought, something to chew on. I was brought to my attention that when there is soccer games on 3rd Avenue, people are trying to cross 3rd from the soccer complex over to the new complex, and we all know that except for Councilman Collison, he hasn't been over there in 2 years, that has built up tremendously, and people are walking.
I'm by the soccer complex a lot.
Well, then you should be able to look right across the street, that's where it's at. That's that whole development,
Yeah,
where the Legacy Park is.
right.
So all that is, got houses in it now, from that soccer complex all the way over to Sandy Parkway, or, where is it, Bel Air? Bel Air. I mean, all of that is done now. So people are trying to walk across that street, because when the parking lots fill up, they start parking on our residential streets. The lieutenant actually has his kids that goes to soccer every Tuesday and Thursday over there, and he's even brought it up that we should at least have one pedestrian crosswalk right there. That's when I asked many of the police officers what they thought about this beginning and end of 30 mile an hour. Little did I know, we have all the way up to 259th, was that, Matt? 99th. 299th, we have the right-of-way in the ditch all the way up to 299. So we could potentially say beginning 30 there, and then end of 30 there as well. We can't regulate the speed once you go out of our city, because then it goes into a township and/or county, so we have no say there. This is only, all I'm looking to do is suffice the residents and maybe give PD a stronger leg to stand on, because I do see a lot of our police officers, they do regulate the speeds within our city limits, and I don't want to give that potential for that ticket to go to court and them fight it on a technicality that.
Well,
could have fixed.
there already is, same on Whiskey Road. They
Oh,
have
yeah.
end of 30 and begin 30.
Correct.
I personally.
There's one 30 mile an
sign-
hour stop,
That sign I'd like to see just go away.
right?
Yeah, I'd like to see it carry over at 30 to the city limits, but.
I would too.
We've had that conversation, but that's not County's road. I personally on
This
this,
is not.
no, I know it's not.
This is our road.
I personally, I don't see a problem with that. It's buying two signs and Public Works going out and driving down the
Well,
post and.
there is a cost to it, which I did ask Matt to look at. Matt, I don't have my phone for you to be able to tell me the exact costs.
To begin speed limit 30, end speed limit 30 is $110 roughly, and just a speed limit sign on a post is 96.
I don't personally, I don't think that's worth even squabbling about to put it in there. If we're having areas, and I have absolutely have no problem with somebody come in, and if it is an issue, then we'll just have to do it. I mean, I don't think we should go out to every street in town and do it right now, but when it comes up, I think we should address it as it comes up. I don't see a problem with that.
Where would the crosswalk go, though?
There's two roads there, and I kept getting them wrong.
But I mean, there's no trails or anything coming from that development.
Well,
over to
potentially there
Third.
will be. It's gonna connect, as Mr. Cook brought to my attention, that it could connect to, what is it, Eagle? Is that what it's gonna be?
Eagle is the north one.
Yeah, so there's two streets. There's one that's further north, and then there's another one that is,
That Eagle's pretty much right across from the complex itself.
right, well, so is the Bluebird Court. They're
Yeah,
both
and I think both of those, do we need to put one on Eagle? I don't know if that's completely done yet, but I
No.
think at Bluebird, whatever.
Bluebird would be,
That would be the
that'd
place
be
to
the
put a
one to
crosswalk
put a
right now.
crosswalk. And then hopefully they get the idea, they just need to walk down and then they can cross, no problem. Or, you know, the PD are gonna regulate that and make sure it's safe to cross. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I guess just to follow up on that Eagle, Street going in, that walk isn't in yet, but it will be going in this summer, and they will have the same, like, just ending head ramp out to Third, when that work is done. So both streets will have a ped ramp that is aiming, you know, onto Third without a receiving ped ramp on the other side, because that trail is on the east side with that grass boulevard.
So are both of them potentially connecting to our trail system, or is just Eagle?
Well, so both of them have the exact same scenario where they're not physically getting connected because there's that grass boulevard there. So, you know, they both would be set up for crosswalks, whether or not you want two of them, you know, that close together or not, but they are set up to be able to be.
How much does it cost to put a crosswalk in?
So because we'd have to build the ped ramp, and actually in these cases, the boulevard is actually like a 4-to-1 down to the trail. and you can't have ped ramps steeper than 8%, we'd actually have to build the trail up and then ramp it down on either side, so you're probably looking at reconstructing 50 feet of the trail and doing the concrete ped ramp in the boulevard, so.
Which eventually is gonna become a problem, but it isn't at the moment.
Right, so you could do like one, you know, and then just see how that goes and see if you wanna do both, but doing that 50 feet of trail and the ped ramp, I mean, it probably would add up to, you know, $8,000 probably, something in that range.
That ain't terrible, the end of it, in my opinion. I mean, maybe no, we don't have to do both right now, one for sure, in my opinion, and then.
I mean, again, eventually it's gonna be a problem, it's just not now.
And then as time goes, maybe we can get it into, you know, in the budget, so we don't have to scramble for it or tiny thing or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I guess the other thing to recommend there is because it's not a stop condition, that's a crossing just a mid-drive lane, you'd want those signs, the, you know, crosswalk signs.
The yellow ones that point
At
down.
least just at the location, and then the crosswalk blocks as well to really make that stand out, but that'd more or less be in that same cost, you know, ballpark, so.
Public Works can do that, can they not?
Yeah, put the signs in and
Yeah.
paint it.
Signs
Yeah.
and painting.
Which is cutting down our cost, but still, I see what you're saying. So that was the thought and the complaints that I've got, that was the ideas. I mean, I did make sure I ammoed up on all my homework before I brought it to you guys, but it's open for thoughts or suggestions or whatever you think.
I suggest we bring it in front of council and vote on it, but I think doing the speed limit signs and the one crosswalk for now, I don't think that's the end of the world.
And we can just deal with the rest as they come
Yeah.
in front of us.
And maybe something that Mike can be creative and get some other financing for, or get it in the budget so we're not dealing with it as a slap in the face later. I don't think we're not talking $150,000, you know, then we have to really look hard at it, but if we're talking $10,000 for all of it, I don't think that's really something for safety for people there. I don't think that's a pretty cheap investment.
I mean, just to do the speed limit signs, that doesn't have to go to council. We can just say, go ahead and do it, and
If we had the consensus, I mean, we do have a signed budget for miscellaneous signs, we would take it
Right.
out of there if there's a consensus. My recommendation was to bring it here if we're doing the begin and end, because we don't have those on our city streets in other locations, so make sure that is.
We're doing whiskey.
But that's not
That's
our
not our
street.
sign.
Oh, that's right, you're right.
So if that's a direction that we wanted to go in, I don't know if it's just on that particular stretch, or if it becomes on others, if the public say, well, I want it on my street too, which I think that's why it's good to have it discussed, if that's something that we want to start doing. Maybe look at it case by case, which is fine too, but that's my recommendation. But no, that doesn't have to go to council. It does need to go to council if you're thinking of doing the crosswalk and potentially the ped ramp this year unbudgeted, if that's the direction, or if the direction is to incorporate into the budget for next year.
When is that development's due to be done, completed, Jason?
So we are on the last phase, so they've already we're actually paving the wear course on phases 1 and 2, last year's connections to Whiskey and the other Bluebird Drive. That's happening tomorrow. And then that sidewalk that we're talking along Eagle is looking like maybe a month or so out, because they're waiting for the private utilities to go in, and then that's it.
So why can't it be put in when that sidewalk's put in?
It could, it wouldn't, I mean. it's
Save
not
us
part-
money, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, I guess that's not part of what the developer, has in their scope of work. Their contractor is doing their work, so we'd still have to kind of coordinate
To our own.
Right.
getting that added, so.
I think like if Councilman Collison says, if the sign's not a big deal, personal opinion, I think Matt should go ahead and get those signs in. And I think if we get some hard numbers by the next council meeting on that, on the crosswalk, so we got a better idea where we're at, I think we should bring it up next council to vote on that. That's my opinion.
I'm good with that.
Sounds good to me.
Anything on that, Councilman Burgley?
I like the idea of the signs out there for the pedestrians, and I'm wondering if also if we could ask Chief Myers maybe to stick out the flashing speed limit sign too.
Like the amber lights you're saying?
So people have an idea.
He's saying like the amber crosswalk lights?
believe that Councilmember Berkeley is talking about the blinking speed sign.
Yeah.
He said
Oh.
speed sign.
Yeah, the chief could always put that out there too. We do have it now, Councilman Burgley. I know we have one. Are we scheduled to get another one, or were you asking for another one? I think we should have more than one.
I think we should have more than one.
We talked about that at the last council
I think
meeting
we should,
about that
I
Feldman.
think when, pick a busy soccer week and put it out there.
Right. Yeah. Not a bad idea. Anything else you have, Councilman Burgley?
No, I think, I'm with Councilman Collison, I think he had some good ideas, so.
Okay, let's move on to E7 then. The duck discussion. Quack, quack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This should quack us up.
It's gray duck.
Goose.
So, at the last committee of the whole meeting, we talked about allowing ducks. And we also talked about turkeys. Turkeys got shot down, no pun intended. But we, or no.
Ta-da-ta.
So-
Told you it would quack you up.
So, we put together some information. We kind of mirrored our chicken ordinance. That's kind of our recommendation. If you were going to allow ducks, maybe it needs to mirror that a little bit. A couple interesting facts is that ducks they need a partner. If they don't have if they're not with another duck, it's very hard for them to survive. If you leave them alone or caged for extended period of time, it's actually considered cruelty to animals. So we want to at least allow them to have 2 ducks at a time. Most ducks produce 1 egg per day. And then, there's just some of those fun facts that are in here that the community development specialist, Saltis, found. So what you have before you is just the research and then the proposed ordinance if you want to allow ducks.
I think it was 6 on 3 acres or less and 12 on 3 acres or more. That sounds good to me. A lot of the other stuff look like it kind of matched the chicken kind of rules.
Yeah, even those numbers are what
Okay.
we did for the chickens as
Yeah.
well.
I'm fine with it.
Anything on this, Councilman Burgley?
I don't think anyone needs 6 ducks, do they? Under 3 acres, 6 ducks, that's quite a few. Maybe 3 or 4. Maybe 6 is quite a few, so.
I personally would like to see it less than 4 or 8.
I think if you look at this, .2 is about the size of our local city lots right now. And if you gotta go to 2 ducks, you're gonna have to amend that to be 2 ducks per city lot. If you, as Councilman Gordon says, 3 acres or less, next thing you know, we're gonna have flipping broods of ducks in every neighborhood. It's just gonna be a nightmare.
That's what I mean. Right now, it's like less than 3 acres 6, more than 3 acres 12. I think that's a bit much.
I think if we're gonna go by this and we're gonna allow it, I personally take out goose. The buggers are mean. And
We're saying duck.
just say duck and say 2 ducks per average city lot.
If I may, so the table that you're referring to with the .4 and the goose, that's East Bethel's ordinance. That was just the backup. So what we're looking at is the same as the ducks, is if you have 3 acres or less, you can have 6 ducks. If you're more than 3 acres, you can have 12 ducks total. So it sounds like you want to decrease that number.
No, decrease the
I'm
number.
sorry, decrease.
Yeah.
Because this is if they're on a .2 city lot, they can have 6 ducks.
I think that's too much.
That's not what we're proposing. That's just what that ordinance.
Yeah, I think that's way too much. I think we should go like 4 or 8.
Fine with me.
I'm not real keen on the whole duck thing because I just think next someone's gonna want a horse and a cow and.
Well, that's why we said at the last meeting that we stop here, and the only reason this is being brought up.
And now we're talking ducks.
Well, it's because I've got people saying, hey, you allow chickens. I have a
How
chicken
many
allergy.
people? One?
3 or 4. And it's only gonna grow, the bigger our city grows. There's a lot of people. My cousin has a chicken egg allergy. Can't eat them. They have ducks, but they have a much bigger piece of land than we could ever offer.
That was my other statement that I stated at that time. sooner or later, you gotta draw a line in the sand, and if you wanna start having a mini farm, you're gonna have to move out in the country.
Which I don't disagree with.
But, I mean, people move into town for a certain reason.
And right now, if someone wanted to, they could, and if this were to go through, you could have ducks, and chickens, and pigeons, and cats, and dogs,
And we stop there.
Bees.
Oh, forgot the bees, you're right.
you know. I guess the only way I would, like, no more than 2, I don't care how big your lot is, 2 ducks, max, that's my opinion.
But I do agree, there's some of these lots that got annexed into the city.
That's what you go, I would be okay with 2 or 4. Instead of 6 or 12, 2 or 4. If you got less than 3 acres, 2, if you got more than 3, 4. Done.
I'm
I
okay
like
with,
2 or 4, that's a good idea.
I'm okay with 2, no matter what size your lot is.
I think 2 or 4 would be more suffice, that's just my opinion.
I'm fine with that too.
And I know where Councilman Calls is coming from.
I
But
do,
yet
too.
again, like some of those lots are 2, 3 acres that were annexed in, that really didn't want to be annexed in.
You're giving them 4.
We're giving them 4. And I don't
Otherwise,
have
2.
a problem with that. But
Otherwise, 2,
I think,
Then, I guess my other question is, are the ducks, are their wings clipped?
yeah, that's a good question.
And we'd have to more than likely put that
'Cause
in
if
our
it
ordinance.
flies over the fence in my yard, my dog's having duck for lunch. And,
Mine would be with you.
and it's
Mine
not
too.
gonna be on me or my dog.
I think I agree with Councilman Collison. I think that the wings should be clipped.
Is that in this ordinance anywhere, Ms. Elm?
Not the clipping of the wings, but it does say that the owner must keep the ducks in a coop or fenced-in area and shall be contained within the owner's parcel at all times. But I know dogs can jump fences, but they would
Yeah.
at least have to have it fenced in.
Coyotes, wolves.
And then I'm gonna pick on Jeff's daughter. Little Emma goes out and decides she wants to walk her duck in the yard. And as soon as the duck gets out of the fence,
Yeah.
it's gone. I agree with you. I think they need to be clipped. Then we are cutting down the nuisance from the neighbors as much as we possibly can. We have to respect their rights as much as the person that wants that.
I don't want a big
I would agree with that.
pile on top of the hood of my truck or my windshield from the neighbor duck.
I might come and leave a pile on top of your truck now you said that.
You can't on mine, I don't care. Luann's gonna be ready for next week or 2.
I would agree, though. I would think their wings being clipped would be a good idea, the cage or.
I mean, if they're
pen.
just, their sole purpose is for eggs, they don't need to fly.
Correct. And we're saving them from any predators if they're being cooped
Penned.
or penned.
I do have to say this, though, you bring in more of these animals, people are gonna start having raccoons, and they're gonna start having fox, and they're gonna have coyotes, and all this stuff is gonna migrate into town. So these people better start realizing, you're gonna start having other complaints. There's gonna be coyotes, there's gonna be raccoons, and there's gonna be fox. We already see a lot of deer. I see 10 deer almost every flippin' day in town.
River Bluff, when I lived there, I saw coyotes and wolves in my backyard because of the river. They just were, there's. it's food
I'm on Main
source.
Street, I see a coyote and a fox. I've seen both.
Now you see a
In the 4
greater
years.
fox.
No.
But I mean,
call it a
I just
fox,
want
but-
I want people to understand, you bring this in, you're gonna bring other critters that we cannot control. So everybody has to understand that. And I am still gonna tell you this, if you want a mini farm, get out in the country, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be dick about it, I thought the chickens were fine. But no, more and more you bring in, the more and more you're gonna start bringing these other critters in.
Look at North Branch, 1 dairy cow, 1.4.
No, as long as I'm here, there's no cows or pigs or horses or
Swine, goose, turkey, goat,
llamas or
sheep.
ostrich. That's just not gonna happen, I'm sorry. Because if you want that, you need to be out in the country.
I
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
agree.
I say bring it all in. Anything and everything.
And they can go over to Jimmy's yard and relieve themselves.
Okay, so I'm hearing 2 ducks for less than 3 acres, 4 ducks for more than 3 acres, and you need to clip the wings. And the rest of the ordinance is gonna be
Is
pretty much the same
perfect.
as chickens
Yes.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
On residential property.
on residential property.
Anything on this, Councilman Burgley? Is that, apparently he muted, unmuted, so that's a no.
Burgley.
Burgley. Any other further discussion that we need to have?
Mayor Johnson, did you want to have any further discussions about the sewer extension along Heritage upon that email? I
Oh,
know
yeah,
that
that email that I got.
Mr.
Again, I don't have my phone, so you'd have to recite it.
Mr. Cook has also reached out to the resident and given her some information as well, but I'll let Mr. Cook bring it up since he has more of those numbers on the top of his mind.
Bring it on, Mr. Cook.
All right, I guess, so the Heritage Walk project that we ended up bidding out, that we'll be bringing to the council meeting tonight to consider the bids for just that walk work. We, in the end, removed adding the sewer extension because basically the evaluation was the cost per resident was too high, and the assessments that would be levied would just be held by the city for an unknown amount of time, and then they'd have to recoup that cost at a higher assessment than the homeowner could probably build. I got an email from a resident, I'm assuming we're talking about the same one, and explained to her that, and the fact that all of the homes along this run actually could elect to drill across under the county road to the nearest sewer and make a connection, and I'm estimating that number at less than we would have been assessing them anyway, at which point then the city is not holding the bag on the cost to put that in and waiting to get reimbursed with assessments, and the resident is going to end up paying less and be able to connect when they want. And so I expressed that to that resident, and she sounded like she was perfectly fine with that answer and understood. And you know, there's only 4 residents, I think, that, or 5 maybe, that would even be on this system anyway. So
Sounds good to me. I think that's the right path. I mean, it's gonna save them potentially more money.
right.
You know, I mean, if you look at it, if it's 10,000 or it's 20,000, I think I'd rather spend 10 grand than 20 of myself. So, and we're not forcing them to tie into it now either.
Right.
If we did that, they potentially, now we've given them the means to tie in, they have to do it. So, no, I think that's a good idea.
Makes sense to me.
Burgley, you have anything to say on this item, sir? We are not hearing what you're saying, Paul.
I would agree with Councilman Mundine. I think he did a good job.
I didn't even understand
Something about
that.
Councilman Mundine, that's what I heard him say.
Okay. I hope you're gonna be here for the city
I am.
council meeting.
I'll be on my way.
All right, cool.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by council, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mayor Johnson, so Ferry Green South development, I know that it was discussed at last council meeting that we'd be bringing it forward for our first right of refusal for lots to, if the county did allow for us to put in a road. We're currently working with the city attorney to draft that agreement, and perhaps, do we want to continue on that path, given what was found out at the meeting yesterday? If we don't want to, then we'll save some money and not have the attorney draft that kind of agreement, so.
I
unless you
attended
wanna
that
carry
meeting,
that.
just so you guys know. I attended, me and Ms. Selman did. They are not gonna do that. What they've actually come up with was, nope, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do anything until the next development to the east is done. What we would like to do is right on 8th and County Road 5, though, we'd like to put an amber lights crosswalk, and we'd like to talk to the city of Isani about that, instead of putting that road in. So they pretty much went from, nope, we're not gonna do that, to, but look at this shiny gem.
And I believe the
Butterfly,
reasons that they shared.
squirrel. That's what they
The
did to
reasons
us.
why they shared to not allow it is because it was not part of that plat, similar to, well, exactly of what Mr. Cook had mentioned at the last council meeting. The original plat was done with there just being the one access, and the rest is restricted from another access, and so that's what they held to.
I'd say let's not spend the money on an attorney.
I say the same.
I mean, we tried.
We
did
did.
try.
We did everything we could.
But that crosswalk's gonna come to us. And
And
all I'm gonna say is I'm for that crosswalk, but we can save a lot more money than what the county's talking about if we let Public Works maintain and take care of that intersection, whether it's painting or, they wanna put up them signs and the amber lights, I'm all for that, but let Public Works paint it, let Public Works maintain it, that's saving both sides a lot of money. Sorry to put more work into that.
Matt's like, Jeff, I want to call you something.
That's a
Just call
county
me
road.
off record if you don't mind.
That's
Okay,
county
so-
road though, I'd say just let the county paint it.
Well, they want us to split the costs right now in order for them to do it,
Split the cost.
of doing that whole intersection. It's in our city, granted, it's on their county road, but it's in our city benefiting our schools. That's how they're looking at it.
Well, I'd say let's not spend the money on an attorney right now.
I say that
I
too.
agree.
Okay, so the consensus from the committee is that we'll inform the attorney that we're no longer going to ask for a first right refusal on those lots, given what the county shared. We will also communicate that to the developer as well, because his final plat was approved, that it was contingent upon that, and that we will not include that within the development agreement or a subsequent agreement. We'll inform him of that as well.
Burgley, you have something you want to say? No? Okay. Yes.
Thank you. That is,
I'm just wondering if, I know, we can only assess 25% on that, right?
assess 25%
Of what?
of the road.
Well, I thought that's what you're talking about, getting that whole thing, we would have to cover the whole cost. Is that what you're talking about, the cost of that?
They're no longer going to even allow us to put the road in there with us paying a cost. They will not, it's prohibited to add another access.
They will not add that road, Paul. They will not.
Oh, they said, oh, I'm sorry, I thought they said they were willing to look at it. Oh, okay.
Nope, they will not add that road until the development to the east is sold, developed, and ready to roar. Then they'll put a road through there, no problem. And they even made it a point that that's not our road either. That's your road, Mr. Mayor.
The developer, whoever develops that lot to the east.
Right.
would need
But
to
we
put
could
that
potentially
road.
put it in there, spending a lot of taxpayers' money, which I don't foresee myself wanting to do it, let alone you guys, so.
No.
Yeah, I agree with that, we don't need to do that.
No. All right, yes, Josie, that is what we're saying. Anything else we have?
That is all, thank you.
I have a motion to
Motion to
adjourn by
adjourn.
Councilman Lundin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Collison. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0, therefore we stand adjourned.